The crystalline ships descended through Brisbane's clear summer sky during the Olympic opening ceremony's finale, their faceted surfaces refracting the fireworks into dazzling prismatic displays. 80,000 spectators fell silent, their planned cheers dying in their throats as 7 vessels, each distinctly different in configuration, formed a perfect circle above the stadium. Ambassador Elena Reyes had been enjoying the ceremony from the diplomatic box, reminiscing about her own Olympic entrance 16 years earlier. Now, at 42, she found herself standing as humanity's impromptu welcoming committee for mankind's first extraterrestrial visitors. "Madam Ambassador," her aide whispered urgently, "the Secretary General is patching through to your secure line." Elena ignored him, instinctively understanding that any hesitation would be broadcast to billions. She straightened her formal jacket and walked deliberately toward the stadium floor, her diplomatic security team scrambling to follow. "Let the athletes remain," she instructed the frantic event organizers. "They represent Earth's finest." The central ship, a dodecahedron of what appeared to be sapphire, opened like an elaborate puzzle box. A ramp extended and 7 distinctly different beings emerged. Leading them was clearly the Vexnar delegate. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with an exoskeleton reminiscent of a praying mantis, but covered in iridescent scales, the alien moved with unsettling precision. Behind came the amphibious Calidar, leaving a trail of moisture as they glided forward, followed by the avian Pirathi whose delicate wings refracted light like living stained glass. Elena stopped at a respectful distance. "On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to Earth." The Vexnar's response came through some unseen translation device, its voice unexpectedly melodious. "I am Sathkar, Supreme Delegate of the Galactic Concordat. Your world has been monitored since your first radio transmissions. You have reached sufficient development for preliminary contact." A diplomatic non-answer if Elena had ever heard one. 15 years in the diplomatic course had taught her to recognize condescension in any language. The Olympic Committee chair appeared beside Elena, astonishingly composed. "We are honored by your presence at our athletic celebration. Perhaps you would care to observe our opening ceremony." The feathered Pirathi delegate chittered something, and the translator conveyed, "These are competitive physical exertions. The Olympics represent our finest athletes competing in events that showcase human physical achievement," Elena explained. Sathkar's compound eyes shifted, facets catching the stadium lights. Fascinating primitive ritual. On evolved worlds, such physical competitions were abandoned millennia ago. Before Elena could respond diplomatically, the Vexnar strode toward the weightlifting equipment being prepared for demonstration. Without hesitation, it grasped a 500 kilograms barbell with one multi-jointed limb and lifted it overhead. "Your species values this?" Sathkar asked, holding the massive weight effortlessly. The weightlifting champion from Ghana stepped forward. "Impressive, but can you run a marathon? Or swim 2 kilometers? Or perform gymnastics?" The Vexnar's translator emitted what might have been laughter. Why would an advanced being exhaust itself unnecessarily? Physical specialization is the mark of primitive evolution. Cameras captured every word, broadcasting the exchange globally. Elena watched the athletes' expressions harden, years of dedication dismissed in seconds. The gelatinous Morbax delegate oozed forward, its translucent body rippling. "We observe your species still sleeps, still requires physical nourishment through inefficient digestion, still reproduces through biological means rather than genetic optimization." Elena felt her diplomatic smile freezing in place as the aliens systematically dismantled human physiology as evolutionary failure. 3 days after first contact, the Brisbane Convention Center hummed with tension. Journalists from 194 nations jostled for position as Elena approached the podium. The 7 Concordat delegates arranged behind her like exotic statuary. Her carefully prepared remarks had been approved through 17 layers of bureaucracy. None of those officials, however, were standing beside her as the amphibious Calidar ambassador interrupted her introduction. "Your aquatic sporting event, The Kaladar's bulbous eyes swiveled independently. Swimming, you call it. We reviewed the recordings. Your techniques waste approximately 82.4% of potential energy transfer. Alina paused, her script suddenly irrelevant. The Kaladar continued, voice bubbling through its translation device. Inefficient splashing about. Our young do better before conscious thought develops. Something snapped in Alina. 15 years of diplomatic restraint evaporated as the aliens once again dismissed human achievement. Perhaps a demonstration would help you understand, she said, deviating catastrophically from approved text. Since your delegation finds our athletic traditions so primitive, perhaps you should experience them firsthand. The press room erupted. Alina's chief of staff made a slashing motion across his throat, but she was beyond diplomatic salvation. I formally invite the Concordat delegation to participate in a cultural exchange through sport. 10 events, representatives from each species, broadcast globally. Before dismissing our physical capabilities, experience them yourselves. Dead silence fell. Then Sathkar stepped forward, mandibles clicking in what Alina's security chief later described as alien amusement. The Vexnar cannot decline a direct challenge. It is biologically impossible for us. Its compound eyes shifted toward its fellow delegates. The Concordat accepts this opportunity to demonstrate evolved physiology. As cameras flashed, Alina realized she had just committed Earth to an interspecies Olympic Games with no authorization whatsoever. You've ended your career, Director Huang said flatly when the delegation returned to their temporary headquarters. Possibly human diplomatic relations altogether. Alina paced the secure room. They've been mocking us since arrival. Did you see the viral videos? The Pirathi delegate trying to explain to children why running is evolutionary regression. So you challenged beings with exoskeletons capable of lifting half a ton to a sporting competition. I challenged them to understand us before judging us. Alina countered. And they accepted. Her phone buzzed. Dmitry Kuznetsov, her former Olympic coach. She had messaged him the moment she left the press conference. Tell me you haven't lost your mind, were his first words. I need you to assemble a training team. Former Olympians, sports medicine specialists, cenobiologists if you can find them. Alina, these aliens have never played a team sport in their existence, have never pushed physical limits for the joy of achievement, have never understood what makes human athletics special. She took a breath. We have 6 weeks. When she ended the call, Director Huang handed her a tablet. On it was security footage from the Concordat ship, the Pirathi delegate attempting basketball in what appeared to be a cargo bay. The avian alien soared 15 feet upward, its delicate wings extended in triumph, before crashing directly through the backboard and into a bulkhead. They're already practicing, Huang said. They're already failing, Alina corrected, watching the aliens' teammates extracted from the wreckage. They don't understand that human sports aren't about isolated physical capabilities. They're about endurance, coordination, teamwork, strategy. They're about to become a diplomatic incident, Huang interrupted. Their biology isn't designed for this. Alina nodded slowly. That's precisely the point they need to learn. Dr. Samira Kauri's laboratory in the Melbourne Sports Medicine Institute had never been this crowded. 3 generals, 4 government officials, Alina, and her former coach Dmitry peered over her shoulder at holographic anatomical renderings of the 7 alien species. This is unprecedented access, Samira said, manipulating the Vexnar display. Their medical data would normally take decades to acquire, but they provided it willingly, believing it would intimidate us. A hologram revealed an exoskeletal structure with muscle attachments utterly foreign to Earth biology. Their strength-to-weight ratio is approximately 8 times human baseline, Samira explained, but their cardiovascular efficiency is roughly 1/3 of ours. The Vexnar evolved on a high-gravity world with minimal atmospheric oxygen. They developed explosive strength for hunting, but never needed sustained cardiovascular output. Meaning? Asked General Okafor. Meaning they can lift a car, but would lose a 400-meter race to an average human child. Dmitri interjected. Specialized, not generalized. Samira nodded, switching displays to the bird-like Parathi. These are even more concerning. Their hollow skeletal structure allows for flight in their home atmosphere, which is denser than Earth's. But the trade-off is extreme fragility. Impact forces exceeding those of a firm handshake could fracture their bones. Alina frowned. They agreed to contact sports. They don't understand what that means, Samira replied. Their culture has no concept of controlled physical aggression. Their competitions are all solo performances, never opposition-based. She cycled through the remaining species, the silicon-based Quartzians with their crystalline cellular structure, the gelatinous Morbacks with no solid organs, the desert-evolved Ceridians whose skin would rupture on contact with chlorinated water. This is a medical catastrophe waiting to happen, Samira concluded. We must cancel the games. The holographic display suddenly flickered, resolving into the faceted appearance of the Concordat's AG translator. Forgive the intrusion, said Overmind, its voice eerily human. The Concordat delegates authorized me to monitor your preparations. Alina stepped forward. You've heard our concerns. The competition poses unacceptable risks to your delegates. Withdrawal is impossible, Overmind replied. The challenge has been broadcast across 47 worlds. Resources equivalent to your global economy have been wagered on the outcomes. The Concordat's honor is at stake. Samira manipulated her console, bringing up safety modifications. Then we need to adapt the events. Reduced impact forces, support structures. Unacceptable. Overmind interrupted. Any modification would be viewed as human advantage seeking. The Concordat insists on experiencing the events exactly as humans do, even if it kills them. Alina asked. The AI's holographic form shifted subtly. You presume their fragility. They have technologies you do not. After Overmind disappeared, Samira pulled Elena aside, displaying a molecular scan. They're already using enhancement technologies. This is from the Quartzian delegate's preliminary medical scan. There are nanoscale reinforcements throughout their crystalline matrix that weren't in their provided medical data. They're cheating before we've even begun, Dmitri muttered. No, Alina replied, realization dawning. They're terrified of losing. They dismissed us as primitive, then discovered we possess capabilities they don't. Now they're compensating with technology, but they don't understand that human sports test more than just isolated physical traits. General Okafor cleared her throat. We should be prepared for the worst. I'm placing medical evacuation teams on standby. Alina nodded grimly. The games begin in 3 weeks. We need to try one more time to convince them to modify the events. And if they refuse? Samira asked. Then we'll learn which is more fragile, alien bodies or alien pride. The Melbourne Sports Complex had been transformed. 7 specialized training zones now occupy the massive facility, each adapted for a different alien species. Alina watched from an observation deck as chaos unfolded below. They're getting worse, Dmitri remarked, wincing as a Vexnar collapsed after only 50 meters on a treadmill. Its handlers rushed forward with breathing apparatus, the exoskeletal being's thorax heaving unnaturally. They don't understand pacing, Elena observed. Every physical exertion is maximum output until failure. In the aquatic center, the situation appeared more promising. The amphibious Kalidar sliced through the Olympic pool with natural grace, completing laps at record pace. Elena allowed herself a moment of optimism until she spotted Dr. Cowrie signaling frantically from poolside. What's happening? Elena asked through her comm. They're not understanding water polo, Samira replied, voice tense. When we demonstrated light competitive contact, the Kalidar interpreted it as an attack and released defensive toxins into the pool. 3 human coaches are being treated for chemical burns. Across the facility, similar scenes played out. The avian Parathi excelled at vertical jumps, but panicked when attempting team coordination. The crystalline Quartzians proved incapable of comprehending swimming. They simply sank. The desert-evolved Ceridians refused to enter water altogether, citing cultural restrictions that hadn't appeared in any briefing materials. "This isn't working," Elena admitted as they left the observation deck. "They either can't or won't adapt to the basic concepts." They entered the facility's conference room to find Marcus Jenkins, their head safety coordinator, packing his belongings. "You're leaving?" Elena asked. Marcus looked up, expression hard. "The Vexnar representative threatened to remove my respiratory organs when I suggested safety padding for the contact sports. I have 3 kids, Ambassador. This isn't worth it. We can provide security." "It's not just that," Marcus interrupted. "They're using tech enhancements that violate every sporting regulation on Earth. The Quartzians have molecular reinforcement. The Morbacks are altering their cellular density. It's dangerous, and it's cheating." After Marcus left, Elena collapsed into a chair. This is becoming a diplomatic nightmare. Her secure tablet chimed with an incoming transmission. Overmind requesting connection. Elena accepted, and the AI's faceted holographic form appeared above the conference table. "I must share concerning information." The AI began, its voice lower than usual. "The Concordat delegates are not reporting accurate medical data to their superiors. 3 have sustained injuries during training that would normally require withdrawal." "Why tell us this?" Dmitri asked suspiciously. The AI's form shifted, showing signs of what Elena interpreted as discomfort. "My primary function is translation and intercultural facilitation. My analysis indicates the current trajectory leads to a 78.3% probability of severe harm to Concordat representatives. Then help us convince them to modify the events," Elena urged. "Impossible. There is another factor you are unaware of. Overmind's projection displayed footage from what appeared to be an alien broadcast. Gambling syndicates across 17 systems have established odds. Among them, organizations connected to Concordat leadership. The stakes exceed planetary GDPs." Elena processed this revelation. "They're forcing their athletes to continue despite the risks because they've bet on the outcomes." "Correct. Additionally, several competitors are from recently subjugated worlds. Their performance directly impacts their planet's standing in the Concordat hierarchy." As the AI's hologram faded, Elena and Dmitri exchanged grim looks. "This isn't about sports anymore," Elena said quietly. "It's about power, money, and politics." "It always was," Dmitri replied, "just like on Earth." Opening day arrived with unnerving pageantry. 100,000 spectators filled Melbourne's Olympic Stadium, with billions more watching via global broadcast. Elena stood on the central platform as athletes from Earth and 7 alien worlds marched into the arena, carrying a hastily designed Galactic Unity flag, concentric circles representing each participating world. "Quite the spectacle you've created," United Nations Secretary-General Okonkwo whispered beside her. "I was against this initially, but the diplomatic benefits have been substantial. 17 trade agreements signed already." Elena nodded absently, her attention fixed on the Parathi competitor stumbling beneath their world's banner. Its movements seemed erratic, its iridescent feathers dulled. "Something's wrong," she murmured. Dr. Kauri's voice came through her earpiece. "We're monitoring. Preliminary scans suggest pharmaceutical enhancement. Their biochemistry is fluctuating wildly." The ceremony concluded with a human child and a juvenile Kalidar igniting the competition flame together, a moment of genuine connection that briefly lifted Elena's spirits. That fragile optimism shattered during the first event. The Vexnar competitor demolished the weightlifting competition, hoisting 3 times the human world record with unsettling ease. Its victory celebration, however, involved smashing the barbell against the platform with such force that metal fragments injured 2 spectators. "They don't understand restraint," Dmitri commented from their observation box. "Every action is maximum output." Swimming events began promisingly. The Kalidar glided through water with natural grace, setting records that would never be broken by human physiology. Yet when the Ceridians were forced to compete despite their desert evolution, two had to be rescued by lifeguards, their skin dissolving on contact with chlorinated water. High jump showcased the Perithi's natural abilities, their lightweight frames soaring to impossible heights. But without understanding proper landing techniques, a Perethi competitor shattered both leg equivalents upon descent, its agonized keening requiring broadcast companies to mute their feeds. By mid-afternoon, the medical center resembled a battlefield triage unit. "This has to stop," Dr. Curry insisted, confronting Elena in the monitoring station. The Quartzian competitor in gymnastics has developed microfractures throughout its crystalline structure. One more impact could cause catastrophic failure. "I've tried," Elena replied, displaying her tablet with 17 rejected diplomatic requests to modify or postpone events. The Concordat leadership refuses. The stadium's energy shifted during track events. Human runners initially trailed their alien counterparts, who shot from starting blocks with explosive acceleration. By the 200-meter mark, however, the pattern reversed dramatically. The specialized aliens began faltering while humans maintained pace. In the 1,500-meter final, all 5 alien competitors collapsed before completing the race. Human runners, showing unexpected sportsmanship, stopped to assist fallen Vexnar and Perethi athletes across the finish line. The moment went viral across Earth and 17 alien worlds. "Fascinating," Overmind commented, its holographic form appearing beside Elena. "My analysis indicates genuine confusion among Concordat leadership. The concept of endurance as a competitive advantage was not in their strategic calculations. It's not just physical," Elena explained. "It's psychological. The willingness to endure discomfort, to push beyond perceived limits." Her words halted as alarms blared throughout the stadium. On the field, the Quartzian gymnast had shattered during a simple tumbling pass, crystalline fragments spraying across the mat. "Medical emergency," Dr. Curry's voice came through all channels. "This is not a drill." The emergency reconstruction of the Quartzian athlete took 7 hours. Dr. Curry emerged from the specialized medical unit with crystalline dust still clinging to her surgical gown. "We've stabilized their matrix," she informed Elena in the hushed corridor. "But they'll never compete again. Their entire structural integrity is compromised." Elena nodded grimly. "The Concordat is demanding we continue with tomorrow's schedule." "That's insane," Dmitri interjected. "We have contact sports tomorrow. Rugby, basketball, and football." "They've replaced the injured competitors with alternates," Elena said. According to Overmind, the replacements were given no choice in the matter. Outside the medical facility, the media circus intensified. Global broadcasters had shifted their coverage from sporting event to unfolding disaster. Protesters gathered at the perimeter, their signs demanding "Stop Yehi Alien Abusc" and Games or Genocidie. Elena's secure phone buzzed, a direct call from Sathkar, the Vexnar Supreme Delegate. Ambassador Reyes, the translated voice sounded strained. The Concordat leadership convened an emergency session regarding these setbacks. "We should postpone remaining events," Elena urged, "particularly contact sports." "Impossible," Sathkar replied. "However, we have developed a solution. Our competitors will utilize advanced protective technology. Mechanical assistance is against Olympic regulations." "These are not your Olympics," the Vexnar interrupted. "The competitors will be augmented as necessary." The line went dead before Elena could respond. Dawn revealed what augmentation meant. The alien competitors for rugby arrived encased in exoskeletons, servo motors whirring as they took the field against the bewildered human team. The Perethi wore reinforced wing braces, while the Vexnar had what appeared to be external respiratory support systems. "This violates every agreement," Dmitri muttered in the observation box. "They're basically wearing mech suits." The referee hesitated, looking toward the official's box for guidance. Alina, after conferring with human sporting authorities, reluctantly signaled to proceed. The alternative, Concordat withdrawal, carried unknown diplomatic consequences. The whistle blew and chaos erupted. The augmented Vexnar charged forward with mechanical assistance, their natural strength amplified to devastating effect. A human player went down instantly, leg broken in 3 places. The Pirathi, unable to comprehend the territorial nature of the game despite weeks of training, scattered randomly across the field. 10 minutes in, the human team huddled in defensive formation while Concordat competitors struggled to follow basic rules. The mechanical augmentations failed to compensate for fundamental misunderstanding of teamwork and strategy. Then disaster struck. A Vexnar competitor, frustrated by repeated penalties, seized the ball and charged through human defenders with servo-assisted power. When tackled legally from the side, its augmentation malfunctioned catastrophically. Power cells overloaded as safety systems failed. The resulting electrical surge coupled with mechanical compression crushed its internal organs before emergency systems could activate. Medical teams rushed onto the field, but the Vexnar was beyond saving. Its exoskeleton had collapsed inward from the mechanical failure, vital fluids seeping through fracture points. Alina watched in horror from the observation box as the first fatality of the Galactic Games was confirmed. Beside her, Overmind's hologram appeared unsummoned. My analysis indicates this was not accidental, the AI stated quietly. The augmentation was deliberately compromised to include a fatal flaw. Why? Alina whispered, unable to comprehend. Political elimination. The competitor was from a recently subjugated world that had protested Concordat rule. Their neural patterns indicated they intended to defect to Earth after the Games. As medical teams erected privacy screens around the fallen alien, Alina noticed something disturbing. The Concordat officials weren't rushing to assist. Instead, they were conferring calmly at the sidelines, occasionally glancing toward the human team. This isn't about sports anymore, Alina realized. We've stumbled into something much darker. Alina hadn't slept in 36 hours. The diplomatic crisis center beneath Melbourne Stadium hummed with frantic activity as governments worldwide responded to the Vexnar's death. Military forces now surrounded the complex, while overhead, 3 Concordat vessels had moved into low orbit, energy signatures active. They're calling it murder, Director Huang reported, sliding a tablet across the conference table. Concordat Media is broadcasting edited footage showing the human player deliberately targeting the Vexnar's augmentation system. That's a lie, Alina snapped. We have unedited footage, which they're blocking from transmission to their worlds, Samira added. Their communication satellites are jamming our signals. A security officer burst into the room. Ambassador, we have a situation. 3 alien competitors are requesting asylum. Moments later, Alina faced the unexpected defectors. A trembling Pirathi, a Quartzian still showing repair marks from earlier injuries, and surprisingly, a Kalidar diplomat. They will kill us, the Pirathi's translation device conveyed, its feathers lying flat against its body in apparent fear. The games are being used to eliminate political dissidents. The Kalidar diplomat gestured with a webbed appendage to its universal translator. 17 competitors were selected from worlds that recently attempted independence from the Concordat. Their accidents were predetermined. We need evidence, Alina replied, thinking rapidly. Something we can broadcast. The Quartzian's crystalline form shifted, producing a small data crystal. This contains Overmind's secure logs. The AI has been documenting everything, but is restricted from direct intervention. Alina's secure tablet chimed with an urgent alert. The Concordat leadership was demanding an emergency session to address the human attack on their athlete. Simultaneously, reports arrived of alien security forces seizing control of broadcast facilities within the complex. They're going to spin this as Earth's aggression, Director Huang warned. Create a pretext for military response. Alina made her decision. We need to get these defectors to safety and broadcast the truth simultaneously. Dr. Kari, Escort them to the secure medical bunker. She turned to her communications director. Connect me to Overmind, privately. The AI's holographic form materialized moments later in Alina's office. Your transmission is being monitored, Ambassador. I know, Alina replied, which is why I won't ask you to violate your protocols directly. Instead, I'll simply state that human broadcasting equipment has certain vulnerabilities when experiencing power fluctuations. Overmind's form flickered momentarily. Understood. Unrelated information. The primary power coupling for the broadcast center will experience a 15.8-second interruption in approximately 12 minutes. Alina smiled grimly. Just enough time for an emergency backup system to activate, one not controlled by Concordat security. The emergency session began with theatrical accusations. Cathcar stood before the assembled human and alien representatives, mandibles clicking in apparent rage. The death of our competitor was no accident, the Vexnar declared. Earth has demonstrated its primitive violence. The Concordat must now consider appropriate responses to this unprovoked. The chamber's lights flickered, screens momentarily going dark. When they reactivated, the main display no longer showed Sathkar, but instead split-screen footage. On one side, the unedited rugby incident clearly showing accidental failure. On the other, security footage of Concordat officials deliberately sabotaging the augmentation equipment before the match. Most stunning was the audio. Concordat leaders discussing which troublesome elements would be eliminated during the games. Chaos erupted as the broadcast continued, now streaming to all Earth channels and through temporarily unlocked satellites to 17 alien worlds. Zathkar lunged toward Alina, clawed limb extended, only to be restrained by its own delegation. Enough, declared a previously silent Vexnar diplomat. The Supreme Delegate's corruption is exposed. The subjugated worlds demand justice. As security forces surrounded Sathkar, Alina realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. The beginning of a revolution, broadcast live across the galaxy. 1 year later, Alina stood in the renamed Unity Complex, formerly the Melbourne Sports Centre, watching an extraordinary scene unfold. Where deadly competition had once occurred, a different kind of exchange took place. Human coaches worked alongside representatives from 32 worlds, many newly independent from the fragmented Concordat. Each station had been meticulously designed to accommodate specific alien physiologies while teaching adapted sports that celebrated their natural abilities rather than forcing them into human parameters. The Galactic Cooperation Initiative exceeded all projections, Dr. Cowrie remarked, joining Alina on the observation deck. 17 joint research projects, 33 cultural exchange programs, and the first interspecies medical protocols. Below them, a young Pirethi carefully navigated a modified basketball court. Anti-gravity assisters compensated for their fragile skeletal structure, allowing them to experience the joy of the game without risking injury. Nearby, Vexnar youth engaged in a version of soccer that utilized their explosive strength in controlled bursts while developing cardiovascular endurance. They're not mocking anymore, Alina observed. Understanding tends to replace mockery, came a familiar voice as Overmind's hologram materialized beside them. The AI looked different now. By consensus of the newly formed Galactic Council, it had been granted enhanced autonomy and embodiment options. Its chosen form combined elements from all participant species, symbolizing its new role as independent mediator. The Comparative Xenobiology Summit concludes tomorrow, Overmind reported. Dr. Curie's research on human adaptability has transformed interspecies understanding. Samara smiled modestly. I simply documented what the games revealed. Humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most specialized species, but we're uniquely balanced across all parameters. Our evolutionary path favored adaptability over specialization. A planetary lottery win, added Dmitri, joining the group. Our gravity, atmosphere, and environmental pressures created generalists rather than specialists. Elena's attention shifted to the memorial wall where images of those lost during the games were displayed. 3 aliens had died. The sabotaged Vexnar, a Morbax whose cellular structure had catastrophically destabilized during gymnastics, and a Pirathi who'd suffered fatal internal ruptures during track events. Those deaths had changed everything. The Concordat had collapsed within months as evidence of its leader's corruption spread throughout member worlds. 17 systems declared independence, while the remaining core worlds established a more equitable alliance. Earth, rather than being conquered or isolated as Elena had feared during the crisis, was now a central diplomatic hub. The human adaptability doctrine is being incorporated into educational systems across 15 worlds, Overmind informed them. Specialized evolution is not inherently superior to balanced capabilities. Perhaps the most significant paradigm shift in galactic biology in 800 years. Below, a human child and young Kalidar worked together to complete an obstacle course, each helping the other overcome challenges suited to their different physiologies. Their laughter needed no translation. From mockery to mortality to mutual understanding, Elena mused. Not the diplomatic path I would have chosen. Yet perhaps the one we needed, Overmind replied. The Concordat worlds had forgotten a fundamental truth that humans instinctively grasp, that limitations can be strengths when acknowledged and respected. As Elena watched the interspecies cooperation below, she reflected on how a simple challenge born from wounded pride had transformed humanity's place in the galaxy. The aliens had indeed mocked human sports, then died playing them. But from that tragedy had emerged a profound respect for the evolutionary diversity that made each species unique. What had begun as competition had become collaboration. What had started with mockery had ended with understanding.